I normally share these kind of unexplained and personal experiences with our Patreon members, but decided to share this one for Halloween. I usually keep the locations and details of my encounters vague to prevent places from being disrespected. Also, those who truly experience something usually approach me with the details I omit. This proves they had an encounter and we share stories. That being said, I'd like to include a word of caution since unusual things occasionally happen when I share my experiences. So listen at your own risk, and don't be surprised if over the next few days you experience a strange occurrence or something that may be passed off as coincidence. If you encounter such things, please write in and let me know. Now, get comfortable and light a candle because this actually happened. As you know, I've encountered and investigated many things in Hawaii and other places. This story takes place in Hawaii, and I'd like to focus on what happened to myself and a member of my team, who we'll call James. Now, our team was comprised of believers, psychics, shamans, people who were sensitive, like myself, but I ensured there were skeptics and members who haven't encountered things. During our investigation, we gather or break into groups of at least 2, but stay within view of each other. On this night, our location was like a field. James, who was a strong believer, was uncharacteristically grumpy and wanted to get things over with. His wife, we'll call her Laura, reminded us it was a very stressful time for James at work, so we gave them distance. As we left James and Laura, another member joined me and asked to document whatever I was sensing. I said sure, proceeded to tell him what I sensed, and he recorded it. At the end of our investigation, the member confessed he secretly scouted the area, mapped it, and took his map to one of our psychics. Our psychics were like consultants and never joined our investigations. The member said the areas I sensed things matched with what the psychic picked up from his map. We were surprised with this test, but James seemed grumpier and wanted to leave. We reminded him our shaman would burn sage and perform a smudging ceremony before we leave an area. James grumbled to get it over with. Our shaman brought the burning sage beside James, and it erupted in smoke and fire. We thought this was unusual, but James said we were exaggerating. It was probably just a gust that stoked the flames, and we should go because he had a tough day of work tomorrow. But Laura reminded him we normally go to a diner to debrief and discuss things. James grew more annoyed and we went to the diner. After this, we went home. I parked in my garage, but before going in the house, I noticed the garage was darker and the ambient light seemed dimmer than usual. I said, I don't know who you are or what you want, but please leave now. The shade flew from my garage like a gust. The ambient light was brighter and the area seemed clearer. But something also happened to James and Laura. While James drove them home, he drifted towards the oncoming lane until his car was thumping the road dividers. Laura joked he was driving by Braille. James corrected the car, but this happened several times during their half-hour drive. Once home, James immediately went to bed. Laura readied for bed, then joined him. James was on his back. His body was stiff. Laura figured he was tired and went to bed beside him. Cold woke her, and she discovered it was radiating from James. It was like dry ice, and James's stiff body hadn't moved since she went to bed, but he was pale like a corpse. She tried waking him. He gasped. His body relaxed. His color returned and the cold stopped, and she went back to sleep. The following day, they got ready for work. James seemed like himself, and he was looking forward to our investigation that night. Laura said the investigation was last night. She told him everything that happened, his crankiness, odd behavior, and discovering his cold body. He didn't remember any of it. We suspected the flare-up from the burning sage was telling us something was wrong with James, since smudging is a way to purify negative energy and he needed more of the stage. But while something may have followed me from the investigation, something possibly possessed James before we began. James did work at a popular haunted place where he encountered things, but that's a story for another time. Happy Halloween.